Welcome to the 38th edition of the PIC Coastal Classic. My name is Sue Ellen Hurling and I'm here with none other than international sailing legend, Chris Steele. Chris, how does it feel to be back in New Zealand, ready to do some yachting, however you're sitting inside?
Well, yeah, looking at what we've got out there at the moment, I'm quite happy to be sitting inside. Looks like it's a bit wet, not a lot of wind out there, and it could be a long race. So definitely going to be enjoying this one from the comfort of my seat.
We've actually seen a few photos pop through from the competitors who are out in the water, and it's been described as a warm cup of pea soup.
Yeah, it's definitely not the best feeling to be out there. It's going to be a long race, obviously, like we said, but yeah, a bit of rain before the start always gets people somewhat warmed up to the feeling of what's going to be a long slug off. So it's going to be a challenge out there. You can see the shots of the boats starting to set up, get ready for racing, and first start, well, not first start, but half an hour away from the first official racing start of the PIC Coastal Classic.
I mean, I think at the moment nobody actually really cares that there's not much breeze out there because we've just got this great number of boats. We did have 175 that we're looking to start. 165 boats are going to be at the start line at Devonport Wharf this morning. And I wouldn't care. I mean, who cares that there's no sun? Who cares that there's no wind? We get to go sailing. New Zealand is the hub of sailing in the world at the moment. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, pretty fortunate. I mean, the hub of all sports, I think, but fortunate enough with the sailing, we can get out there with our mates. No social distancing as such. So, yeah, nice to be able to share a confined space, get on a boat, enjoy a long race and everything else that comes with it once you get up there.
This race does actually kick off the summer boating season here in New Zealand. And whilst it might look a little overcast there at the moment from those shots that you're seeing, trust me, the sun will come out at some point over this Labour long weekend. And this race, as I said, this is the 38th year that this has been raced, and it's 119 nautical miles in length from Russell to the Bay of Islands. Do you want to just run through the course for us?
Yeah, so the boats are all going to start off Devonport Wharf there. And then it's a pretty straightforward race after that, leaving Little Barrier, the Mokohino Islands and Pornite reserves all to starboard before the quick dash up the finish to Russell Wharf. So it's a pretty straightforward race, but one of the things that's obviously very exciting about it is every year it serves up something different. We've sort of had downwind starts the last couple of years and sort of faster race times, and this year's completely different. Very light winds pushing current off the start line. It's going to be quite a ways for the boats to get out of the Waitemata Harbour, and then finally heading up the coast. It's going to be a long one. So I guess the line honours this year record is definitely not under threat of being broken, but maybe for the first time in a long time, maybe the line honours could be a boat coming in somewhere around the midnight mark. So plenty more boats finishing on a Saturday for a change, which is going to be great for the locals up there, I'm sure.
And look, we're just having a look at Timberwolf there, the newly restored trimaran by Liz Alzoni, and she has Commodore of the Multi-Hull Yacht Club of New Zealand, Gria Houston, on board. I caught up with Gria yesterday, and he was pretty pumped about the race today after having a bit of a yarn with Chris Skinner. We'll cut to that interview now. This is Bex Hornell. No, that's Bex. You've heard her name before. Bex did the Sands Round North Island two-handed race earlier this year with your dad, Chris.
Yeah.
You were selected for the Royal Acarana Yacht Club Youth America's Cup team, and now you are on board NZ Ocean Racing, the Volvo 65 campaign run by Bianca Cook. Oh my gosh, what a year! Everyone else has had a sucky year. That sounds like a fantastic year.
It hasn't been bad.
So tell me, what sort of crew dynamic have you guys got on board? Because everyone's still quite new to the boat itself. I mean, you do have a couple of quite big names on board, but how are you guys all coming together as a crew?
I think we're coming together really well. Everybody on the boat has a lot of experience, so it's all gelling nicely for now anyway.
And how excited is everybody to get on that start line? This is the very first race, the maiden race as NZ Ocean Racing.
Yeah, everyone's really excited. We have been pushing pretty hard to get the boat going, and it's going pretty well from what I see anyway.
So tell us, what's your position on board?
I'm mid-bow for this race.
So as mid-bow, for those that might not know, what does your job entail?
On this boat, I'm helping put up the sails, a lot of grinding actually, mostly grinding. Yeah, all the day at the gym.
Fantastic. So what is the end goal for you guys in this race? I mean, is it to play conservative or is it to really push the boat hard?
We're definitely going to be pushing as hard as we can to get to the first, obviously, and hopefully beat all the little multi-hulls as well.
So there are some quite fast multi-hulls in those multi-hull divisions, and there's also the 36-metre, 118-foot super yacht, Miss Silver, that's also racing. You're going to go against those guys.
Well, with the forecast, hopefully we'll be all right. It's looking light upwind, so hopefully we'll put those boats behind us quietly.
So the goal for NZ Ocean Racing in the 38th PIC Coastal Classic is to be the very first boat to cross the finish line in Russell.
Of course, yes.
Now that is also, you're sailing into your home waters, you are from the Bay of Islands. Does that sort of add an extra sort of special element to the race?
Yeah, I mean, this is a race that I've done a lot of times now, and it's always a race that I really enjoy, and of course I love sailing into the bay. It's my hometown, so yeah.
Fantastic. Well, best of luck to you and the entire team on NZ Ocean Racing. The world is watching you guys. You're the only boat that's really out there training hard.
Yeah.
Go New Zealand.
Perfect, thank you.
Well, that clearly wasn't Gria Houston. That was Bex Hornell, who is on board New Zealand Ocean Racing, which you can see in screen now. And look, I mean, Bex is pretty excited. She's been training really, really hard for this particular race. Her goal is to be on board New Zealand Ocean Racing in the ocean race next year. But look, the other thing as well, we've at 8:15 this morning, the 36 degrees brokers cruising rally started, and I reckon that the cruising guys have got it absolutely made this year. They get to motor for 4 hours.
Yeah, and they started at 8:15, so they're already well underway. And from pictures that we saw earlier, they were all under motor. So looking like the early tactic there is to just start fast and hope for the best after that. But like you said, the race isn't so much as the important part for them. It's more the social element, and they said there's plenty of good spot prizes up for grabs. So they're all pretty happy campers, and I bet you there's a few other people out there at the moment wishing they joined the cruising division, because it's going to take them a while to get out of the harbour.
Well, there were actually a few boats that decided to tack over to the cruising rally at the last minute, and I reckon that those people have probably made a really good call. We've also got 3 all-female crews in this race as well, which we've got Activator and Ikamoana and Oracle. There are 6 single-handed, 7 double-handed, and 1 mixed person crew, which is Claudia Pearce and Murray Craig on board the Young 11 Kaimai Flyer. But here you go here, looking at Auckland. I reckon Auckland looks pretty good today, even though it is a little overcast.
Yeah, the pictures can always be a bit deceiving. This time in the right way, it looks like it's not too bad, but we hear it's a little bit wet out there. So the good thing that you can see from the shots is it looks like there's a little bit of breeze there. So that's good for getting out of the harbour, which we've talked about as being such an important part of the race, and especially for the line-honours boats like the Volvo 65, New Zealand Ocean Racing. They'll be trying to get out of the harbour. Remember, the current's going to be going against them, so it's going to be slow off the line, but if they can get out with a little bit of breeze, that'll make life a lot easier once they get out past Ringy Light.
Well, you just see there everybody sort of starting to get their sails up as they make their way to that start line. The starts are staggered. There's 15 minutes between each start. The first one kicking off at 9:30, and then every 15 minutes, all 15 minutes from there. So it's going to be a very busy morning for the race officials and the spectators, obviously, as well, who are out in force. And hopefully they can keep their wake to a bit of a minimum. We know the harbour master is out watching, so make sure everybody stays at the right speed limit. We will actually try and get to that interview of Gria Houston. He was really excited after speaking to Skinner about the race, and he is on Timberwolf, that restored trimaran, the green trimaran. And look, let's have a listen and hear what Gria had to say.
Gria Houston, who is Commodore of the Multi-Hull Yacht Club of New Zealand and also sailing on the trimaran Timberwolf. Gria, you must be pretty stoked to have 175 entries, considering all the drama that's happened around 2020.
Yeah, I think we are pretty stoked to have 175 boats. We were, I think a month ago, we were looking at 100. So 175, that's totally blowing my mind, and I think everybody, all those organisers. So I look forward to seeing them all out there, and thanks for coming out. Obviously, everybody wants to go for a sail. So, it could be a long one, so they're going to enjoy their time on the water.
Have you seen a lot of boats come out of the woodwork who haven't seen out racing for quite some time?
What's funny you say that, the boat I'm on, Timberwolf, that's been a process bringing that back to life. But actually a conversation I had on the phone yesterday I think her name was Helen, Zero Tolerance, which is a boat that was owned by Daggy, squatty member. That hasn't been on the water for a while, so they've got that going again. So that's a boat that's come back into the race. I look forward to seeing that.
And this is definitely a weekend warriors race as well. I mean, there's a lot of pro sailors in the lineup this year, but predominantly anybody who's got a boat that can get Cat 3 can get involved in the PIC Coastal Classic. Is that right?
That's correct. You get Cat 3, you can enter the race, head up the coast. Yeah. Stay safe is probably our biggest thing, but yeah, any boat can enter. Cat 3, get into it. Yeah.
Now, speaking of entering, you did say that you're on Timberwolf. You are in Division 7. You're a little bit untested. You're going to have for a few training runs, but how do you think you're going to go against the rest of the boats in your fleet?
Well, Division 7, I think the Timberwolf was built for this division back in the day. I got my good friend Bob Fisher on with me. We've sailed since the Dirty Deeds days together, really, in the coastal. But I think just talking to another friend of mine, Chris Skinner, he's got me a bit G'd up, actually. He's talking about, you'll get around Cowell, just pop the masthead screecher and away you go. So I'm quietly feeling a bit confident.
Chris Skinner has a lot of great advice. We know that.
Yeah, he's also kicked 6 kilos of chicken. But I'm looking forward to it now. I'm looking to power the boat up. Hopefully we'll have a good ride.
Do you have any pre-race premonitions?
I have some, but I've talked to you about that before we came on the camera, but I won't mention that. But always sailing into Russell, hull out, winning has always been a goal of mine. I've never won the overall race. I've won the division, but it'll be good to be the first boat in there. I might try and have that premonition tonight.
Do you think you could win it?
After talking to Skinner, I think anything could happen. But no, who knows? I don't actually know. Like you say, we're untested on the boat. Anything can happen. But we'll give it a good shot. Send it as hard as we can, basically.
And it all happens in Russell at the end of the race. So what do the sailors and supporters have to look forward to this year?
Well, look forward to when you get there in the dark, early morning. There's lights on the wharf. That's a new thing that's happened today. I was like, okay, that's cool. But Friday's the normal get on the booze thing, and then Saturday we've got 7 o'clock briefing, prize giving, and then we've got a band starting at 7:30. So I think everyone, as they're keen to sail, they're also keen to party. So it should be a good time up there.
You're keen to party, aren't you?
I'm always.
Okay, so before you start partying, there are a lot of people that actually go into making a race like this possible. The Great Race North, the PIC Coastal Classic. Is there anybody in particular who you'd like to thank?
Well, I think this is my opportunity to say a race like this wouldn't happen without the PIC insurance brokers. Massive support for the last five years. They're here now helping out with briefing and handing out all the packs. So we've got to thank them. We also thank all our sponsors, everyone to make this race happen, and all the competitors for entering and making this year a big one again. So that's awesome.
Fantastic. Gria Houston, Commodore of the club that runs the Great Race North, the PIC Coastal Classic. Best of luck.
Yeah.
So great to hear from Gria. He's pretty excited, and I know that he has a really good time when he gets up to Russell with his crew. Now, Steely, you've done this race 4 times. Most recently was last year on Anarchy. What would be the tactics around the start for this race? Like, what would you be doing based on how the tide is and how the breeze is? Where would you go?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, like we sort of mentioned earlier, this year boats are going to be sailing upwind and very light breezes, pushing current off the start line. The last few years that I've done it, it's sort of been a downwind start and, breeze picking up as you go. So obviously for the race times, that means it's going to be a much slower race this year around, which makes the start very important because if you can get away clean, you basically get the first pick of the breeze as you go up the coast. And with a freshening forecast, it sort of looks like the rich are going to get richer. So definitely looking to make sure you get away off that start line clean, potentially less current on the left-hand side here on the North Shore. You can see from the drone shot here, be more current out towards the other side. Remember, you're going to have to cross over the channel if you start down by the committee boat end. So I'm going to say that the favoured sort of track is going to be up by the Devonport Wharf side of the course. But bearing in mind that brings into account the wind shadow that you're going to get off North Head as well. So it's a very tactical start. Without being out there on the water, it's hard to pick exactly what's going to work, but certainly think it's going to be a very important part of the race. So going to be interesting to see. who does what, and we'll figure it out as we go. But yeah, like we said, rich get richer after the start, and hopefully the breeze picks up a bit and those guys get out of there reasonably quickly.
Well, the smaller boats in the fleet are the ones that actually get started first, so they've actually got a great clear line, no wind shadows from the other boats. They can basically pick and choose where they want to go. But it's the boats in the bigger divisions, the faster boats in the fleet, the 52s, the 40s, the NZ Ocean Racing, the Volvo 65. I mean, they're the ones that are going to have to actually dodge around the smaller boats in the fleet to get their clear path. You've only sailed on big boats in this race. I mean, it must be great to have that option. But so, I mean, as a big boat, how do you navigate your way around those little boats to make sure that you don't sort of, get in their way either?
Yeah, the interesting one is obviously with the boats going up when the speed differences aren't going to be as high as they would be sort of going down, where you see the big boats start to, get up on the plane and really start to surf down the waves. So it will be a little bit of a dodging and weaving. It always is, but hopefully the congestion that you normally sort of get off Rangi Light and in between North Head, hopefully the boats are a little bit more spaced out. The angles aren't going to be as wide as they would be for the different size boats. So, the bigger boats should be able to navigate their way through the fleet relatively easily, although it might take them a bit longer to do it in the sense that you're going to be sailing through a lot of disturbed air from the leaders. So, obviously the cruising division looks like they're going to be having the best time out there starting under motor. So they're going to be able to put some clear distance on everyone else whilst they're motoring into the current. We could see the bigger boats start a bit slower, further back, trying to get through that disturbed air and make their way out to cleaner air, hopefully off a sort of Rangi Light, or maybe even further out by Kiawa.
Well, we need to just take an opportunity as well to thank the amazing lineup of sponsors that actually make this race possible. Obviously, principal sponsor, PIC Insurance Brokers, who is one of the largest independent insurance brokers that is 100% Kiwi owned and operated. And in, the current times that we're living in, having, shop local, #shop local, and supporting local businesses is what it's all about. We've also got divisional sponsors being Predict Wind, Doyle Sales, B&G, 36 Degrees Brokers, and Mount Gay Rum. Obviously, then clothing partner is Zyke, event partners Yachting New Zealand and Bernard International, and prize sponsors Burns Co, Duke of Marlborough Hotel, Edmund Hillary Clothing, Sage Restaurant at Porora Bay, James Boat Valet, Foster's Ship Chandlery with Eco Store, and Boating New Zealand. Wow, that is a massive lineup of supporters of this race, and just goes to show that this really is New Zealand's great race.
Yeah, well, it's the classic, isn't it? It's what all the Kiwis sort of talk about. The great race happens once a year, but like we've said, there's so much more to the race than just the actual sailing itself. So, yeah, it's an exciting time, and like we said earlier, we're super lucky that the race can go ahead under the current circumstances that the world is having to deal with at the moment. But looking like we'll be able to get some good action. Although it's going to be light, we'll still get some racing, which is positive news for all those race fans tuning in.
Absolutely. Now, we caught up yesterday with Mel Homer, who is on Ika Moana, one of the all-women crewed boats, so one of 3 all-women crewed boats in this fleet. And Mel was pretty excited. I mean, they jumped over from the racing division into the cruising division because they knew it was going to be a long haul up to Russell. But let's just have a see what Mel had to say yesterday before the start.
No, you've got to do these. You've got to do the winch.
Oh, yeah. The winch.
Okay, hang on. Up the halyard.
Well, that could be rude. Yeah. What about this one?
I like this one. We're on the wheel.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I like this. On the wheel. You'd be really cool.
Oh, hang on. On the wheel. Come on, Drew.
Yeah. Champagne sailing.
Now, speaking of champagne sailing, I hear you have jumped into the cruising division.
Yes, we have, because we looked at the forecast and we went, if we actually go in the division that we're going to go in, we're not even going to get to the bay. So we might as well do it so we can at least motor and get there for the end of the weekend.
Right, so before we go any further, this is Mel Homer, and Mel is actually on board Ika Moana in an all-girls crew for the 38th edition of the PIC Coastal Classic. Mel,
Yeah.
why all girls?
Well, it's just the way it ended up, really. We were trying to get my teenage son to come along, but he got a better offer, so he's not gone.
You mean he didn't want to hang out with a bunch of cool chicks?
He did want to come with his mum, and I really, really tried. Oh, we've done it. This is our 3rd time doing it. I think we have like about every 2 years we do it. And it's always been all females. We've got three women, 2 kids. and it's going to be lots of fun.
So, how do you guys actually select your crew when it comes to something like the Coastal Classic?
Well, it's very, very, very difficult to select the crew. We basically do a Facebook message, say who wants to do it, and we go, yeah, and we're in.
And you're in.
Yeah.
So if I had got that message, I could have said, yeah,
You could have been in it too, yeah. Like we've all got like between us we've probably got like 100 years of experience between us. No, sorry, only
That's
like
actually-
5 years really,
that's-
because we're pretty new to the sport. Yeah.
100 years is not that much considering
I know.
some of the crews that, like, this
Three of us.
so this is the 38th year, and there's some crew that have actually done 37 races.
Wow. See, I've definitely graduated from doing the bow on like a young 11 to being at the back of the boat in a cruising boat where I don't even think I'm going to get wet.
That is the way to do the Coastal Classic. Now, you are also a huge advocate for women in sport.
Yes.
What would your advice be to any female who's actually looking to get involved in sailing?
Just do it. You just got to get out there and do it. I think sometimes people get a little bit intimidated by it because they look at it and go, oh, it looks so difficult. You've just got to get out there because I think most women, or everybody in sailing, is really supportive of getting more people into it because we love it. We want to sort of, get people into the cult.
We do love it. Is a cult.
Yeah.
Sailing is probably one of the best cults out there.
Yeah.
Because you can, well, we probably won't go into that. But anyway, sailing is fantastic.
And you should get into it now because then when the America's Cup is on, you can watch it and go, oh, yeah.
Oh, I do that.
Wouldn't have tacked there. Yeah.
Mel Homer, it's so great to have you as part of the Eco Moana team, the all-female team, one of 3 in this year's Coastal Classic, the PIC Coastal Classic, which is its 38th year. Best of luck out there.
Thank you.
Now, just one sneaky little question.
Yep.
How much champagne have you got on board?
Well, we are definitely rattling. And we're having a roast dinner on the way out too because what's a coaster without a roast on the rail?
This girl's got it sorted.
Yeah.
Have fun.
I will.
See you up there.
Well, let's just ignore that horrendous attempt at some dancing at the start of there and look at Auckland. Doesn't that look beautiful? Nice little bit of cloud cover over the Sky Tower. The mood is definitely set. But the big question is going to be is which boat is going to be first into Russell and cross that finish line? It could be anyone. It could be one of the multi-hulls or it could be New Zealand Ocean Racing. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a super difficult one to try and work out, I guess. Caught up with John Bilger last night with the predict wind forecast and, what an awesome tool that is to try and give us a bit more of an insight to especially races like this where, we've got the tracking and we can sort of see roughly like the estimates of each boat and how long it's going to take people to get up there. And the arrival time this year, it's fair to say that the record's definitely not under threat. And sort of I spoke to Josh Salthouse, who's done a lot of the navigation for the New Zealand Ocean Racing over the last couple of weeks, and their routing is showing them finishing somewhere between 11 o'clock and midnight tonight. But obviously that depends on how much breeze they have at the start. So they said it's a very light, interesting race with incoming tide at the start, which is going to make it difficult. But they're expecting a sort of steady breeze and slow increase, which is a little bit better than the forecast they had earlier on in the week. A few tacks up to Cape Rodney. Then potentially a lay through from there to Cape Brett with a slight light downwind into the bay at the finish. And so, if they're talking about an arrival time of around 11 to 12 o'clock tonight, you can imagine that the rest of the fleet going to be arriving quite late into sort of midday or even Saturday evening. So it's definitely a much longer race this year, but something different, something good for people that are watching to try and sort of figure out how it's going to play out.
Absolutely. And the record is held by Boges, the Mod 70, who shaved 14 minutes off the previous record. So the current race record is 5 hours, 0 minutes and 13 seconds for the first boat in to Russell. So yeah, pretty safe to say that record is going to stand as we head into the 2021 race next year. And you can see there with that great shot from North Head, having a look across the harbour to the port, and the start line there basically is almost the length of the width of the harbour from the Oraki Buoy to Devonport, and there is the start boat in there as well amongst the mix. But you can see all of the boats now just starting to get a bit of a feel for what's out there. Good to see that we've got more than that 3 knots that John mentioned that we were going to have at the briefing last night. You can see Carrera with the black sails there. Brothers are on board. We've got Matt Morgan and twins Sam and Pat Morgan on board Carrera there with John Meadowcroft on the helm. And it's a bit of a challenge to make out some of the other boats, but I mean, no doubt it's going to be hectic on that start line, because even though it is a 119 nautical mile race, everybody wants to get the best spot on the start line, no matter what happens.
Yeah, like we said, because it's an upwind start, well, not an upwind start, but an upwind race most of the way, that the start is going to be very important. You can sort of see on the live shot right there just how light it is off the corner of Devonport Wharf. So although that's going to be the best spot for tidal relief as the boats come out around North Head, there's a lot less wind. So that's something that you've got to factor into your decision making. And yeah, it'd be interesting to see how these guys rack up as we approach the start of the first division, which looks like they're about less than 4 minutes away from getting underway here.
So at this particular point, you're all in. You're right, this is it. We're going to start this race. It doesn't matter now if you've not got enough food or water on board or beverages to get you through. I mean, this is now it. So most of these boats will be at sea for a minimum of 24 hours. Some maybe a little bit more than that. And I spoke to one sailor this morning who's on Young 88 War Machine, Nathan Laurie, and he just walked up to me and shook his head and went, "Oh my gosh, this is going to be a long one."
Yeah, it's going to be a long one for everyone, especially for those guys on War Machine in particular. But for a lot of these boats, we touched on the race time finishing. This must be the first year in a long time where line honours probably won't be making it into the bay in broad daylight. It's going to be sun's going to be down for sure, and the moon's going to be up by the time the first boats sort of get up there. So it's that obviously night sailing adds in a completely different level of skills, and for a lot of boats who are probably more used to finishing in the dark the last couple of years, they're probably going to be pushing back into sort of mid-morning on Saturday now. So yeah, it's definitely a different race this time around, and gives us a bit more excitement to talk about for a longer period of time, I guess.
And just a reminder for those who are watching from afar, or loved ones who are still at home watching, you can follow the race on the Predict Wind tracker, and a link is on the Coastal Classic website. That's coastalclassic.co.nz. So gone are the days where you can just slip across the finish line unnoticed, because everybody is on the trackers now. There's no hiding, there's no secrets.
Yeah, although I wouldn't be surprised if a few just flick off every now and again. It's
Go incognito.
Yeah, but I mean, what we've said in terms of the wind direction, potentially a lay through from sort of once the boats get sort of around Cower all the way to the Brett. So there shouldn't be too much surprise with regards to the movements. Most of the boats will be taking pretty similar lines, I think. But because the tide's so strong, that does open up a few different opportunities for boats that want to push it a little harder than others getting tight. Obviously, New Zealand Ocean Racing, the Volvo 65, they draw sort of 4.5 metres. So they're not going to be able to get too close to, or almost 5 metres. So they're not going to be able to get too close to the shore to start with. So, that all those sort of things come into play. And it's going to be interesting to see how everyone racks up here.
Well, 2020 has dished out way too much excitement and drama, I think, for anyone to handle. And this is going to be an exciting start. Even though it is light, we can start to see now some of those smaller boats getting ready on their respective start line. And as you can see there, Carrera just having a play around with one of the start boats there. It's not their start, though, so they should probably, maybe just move on a little bit, let the small boats have a play.
Yeah, it's a bit early in the day to be making enemies, I think, especially with a race that's going to be as long as it's looking like. I think you want to try and make as many friends as possible.
I mean, we've got small boats in this fleet. There's a Far 727. There's an Elliott 7 as well. I mean, gosh, it's just going to be such a long slog for those guys. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think as well, one of the busiest divisions, or the closest racing that you're probably going to see out there is, we've got a lot of 40-footers, and it's going to be exciting times to sort of see how some of the new boats line up. I talked about doing the race last year in Anarchy, and that was eventful to say the least. Obviously, conditions are a lot different this year, so hopefully it's more of a straightforward race for them and everyone else. But we're just coming up to the start here.
You can see War Machine is looking really good there right at the pin. They're going to get an exceptional start if they can hold it back. And looks like we're getting very, very close to these boats underway now. It's like sailing, but in slow motion.
Yeah, so you can see the orange mark there. That's just laid off the corner of Devonport Wharf. So committee boat just to the right of that. But the boats have got underway. Looks like they're all favouring this nearer side, sailing less distance to get out around North Head, out of the current as well, which we talked about earlier. But it's good shots there on board from War Machine, showing just how light it is. They've got people down to leeward already, and looks like it's only going to get lighter for them as they get closer to North Head there. So a bit of a tricky patch here.
Well, that young 88 War Machine, you would have to say that they nailed that start. Look at them off the blocks there, just leaving the rest of the fleet in their wake, and they're going to be in an excellent position. They've started on the right side of the line, the side of the line the left-hand side, but the correct side that you said that you would start if you were out in this race. So I think War Machine, give those guys a pat on the back. They've done quite well at the start of this particular race. And you can see the rest of the fleet there in the small boat division, and maybe the slow boat division. It's going to be a long one for them. But yeah, look, they look like they're getting away quite nicely.
Yeah, you can see from the pictures already just how much more these boats closest to the screen are out of the current. The boats further down the line, they're actually further away from the camera there. They're actually leaned over more, so that would indicate that they've got slightly more pressure, but they're pushing a lot more current, so they're not moving through the water nearly as fast. Low tide this morning was at around 7 a.m. So they're about mid tide right now. It's very, very strong, and they're pushing a lot of water there. There's a lot of resistance, so it's only going to get more difficult for them as they get out to the edge of North Head, and the breeze swings a little bit further left as these guys harden it up on the wind. So expect to see those inside boats stretching out here, and like we said earlier, the rich kind of get richer, especially for the early part of this race.
I tell you what, considering the forecast, I reckon that these guys are going to have a fantastic time because everybody is so keen to get out sailing. We saw it with the Sands Triple Series. Numbers were absolute record, and then given the conditions that we had just a couple of weeks ago, obviously the fleet's diminished a bit because it was going to be 40 to 50 odd knots on the nose. So 7 to 10 to maybe 15 on the nose is a hell of a lot nicer than those rough conditions. But, there's also that excitement. And I think regardless of what these boats are going to get, there is going to be excitement as they make their way up the coast. It is absolutely stunning. You've seen it.
Yeah, depends on the rain as to how much visibility they're going to get, but you really can't beat that sort of stretch as the boats go around the Poor Knights. The water's extremely clear and clean there, and you always sort of seem to get pretty good breeze along the coast there as well. So there's plenty of nice scenic parts of the race, but yeah, without a doubt, the close quarter racing that you get with all the competitors is always good fun too.
You can see T-Rex there, just a come-in picture in SR26, a highly modified SR26, and those guys really push their boat to the limit.
You can see like a masthead zero there, and they've got their main fully ragging, so the boat's got plenty of power right now, and they're obviously just trying to truck out from underneath the boats further up the line. Remember, they're going to be pushing more current down there, so it's a bit of a trade-off, but they've got the jib dropped on the foredeck there as well. So expect to sort of see them as they get round to the corner of North Head, probably get rid of that masthead zero and put the jib back up as they harden on the wind.
That's probably a good decision that they've made there, though. Just get optimal speed, when you can, break away from the shadow of the rest of the boats, get some clear air. You can see the guys just getting up on the side there and hiking it down, and that worked.
You can see just how variable the conditions are. The boats, as it gets hit by the puff, it leans over a lot, and the main starts to sort of flap or turn inside out, as we say, and then through the lighter patches, they're able to shoot that main on as the boat sort of comes more upright. So the masthead zero sail that they've got there is giving them the little bit more power that they need to get through the lighter patches. And once they sort of start to get out where there's a little bit more consistent breeze, you'll see them put the jib back up and get rid of the masthead.
You can see there the little Elliott moving violation with Nicholas Garner on the helm this time around. That boat did the round North Island race earlier this year before the world fell apart, and it's great to see the little boat there pushing it hard yet again. Again, they've opted for the same sort of setup as the SR26 T-Rex.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a common theme, especially when you start looking back at some of the bigger boats. You'll see people looking at using especially the Volvo 65, using the masthead zero to probably punch out through, like we said earlier, they can't come right in close to the shore where it's shallower, so punch out through that current and get into a more steadier breeze. And, for the guys that are just out there not pushing the racing side of it too hard, I think you just leave leave the jib hoisted and kind of just make your way out slowly but surely into where we see the more consistent breeze. You can see the fleet sort of coming to a point at the front there. Everyone's kind of starting to figure out the right line to take as they head out. You can see North Head on the left-hand side.
It's great to see so many spectator boats out today as well. I mean, part of this long weekend is that, we kind of kick it off on Friday, really. Friday is like, don't worry about work today. And the spectators go out and it kicks off a great long weekend, not only for the sailors, but for the spectators and the support crews as well. Some of them who actually take their cruising boats all the way up to Russell. And then you usually see some of the keel boats getting towed back behind the launches on their way home. As you can see there's Babe, another young 88 I can just see out there, got their jib up there, just giving some gas to the boats behind them, but they're also getting a fair amount as well. Oh, it does look light, doesn't it? Looks a little frustrating.
Yeah, you can just sort of see some of the boats down to leeward there on the far side of the camera, just in a world of pain as they sit in quite a lot of disturbed air from the lead boat. So we talked about it earlier, the boats that are starting later, the bigger, typically faster boats are going to have a lot of disturbed air that they've got to sail through. So that's quite a painful process early on, especially when you're trying to get out to clearer airs. So big turnaround, almost a completely different race to last year.
Oh gosh, I remember last year we could really only go as far as Rennie Light in the photography boat. It was just so chaotic, such a stark contrast to what the fleet have got this time around. But it is typical, 2020.
Absolutely. The good thing is that they're out sailing. You can't complain too much more aside from that. So
absolutely not. 165 boats making their way from Auckland to Russell in the Bay of Islands for the 38th PIC Coastal Classic. And gosh, I just really wish there was more breeze for them.
Yeah, I'm certainly not too bothered to be sitting in here in the studio watching some of these shots at the moment. I think if it was downwind and sort of 15 to 20 knots, you'd be pretty jealous of some of the boats and what the riders that they have to come. But it's looking light out there, very flat. It's a good shot from North Head here that we look down on the race course.
So we are getting ready for another start. So our camera guys will jump back to the start line so we can get the next start. And as we wave off the smaller boats in the fleet as they make their way north. And we've actually got a great competition between some of the cruising multi-hulls as well. We've got Apache, Cat Iron. Those guys are just all on. And then you've got Romanza as well, the 60-foot Rapido trimaran. He has got all the luxury comforts on board. But even though it's actually quite funny, even though the cruising multi-hulls, are just that, cruising multi-hulls, rumour has it that Cat Iron sent out a spy boat to go and check on Earl Williams on Apache just to see what changes they've made this year. It's great. I mean, we've got, Mike Quilter, Joey Allen, Craig Satterthwaite, Earl Williams, Barry Tom on board Apache, so there's some rock stars out here in the fleet because none of them can travel anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when you hear some of those names floating around, there's definitely a few tricks up their sleeves. They've obviously done the race many times, but, they've been involved in some of the biggest aspects of the sport as well. So there'll be plenty of trickery going on amongst themselves.
Look, I mean, and Cat Iron's not to be left out as well. Graham Catley, owner of Cat Iron, is currently in Singapore. So he's handed over to his brother-in-law, Owen Rutter, who has done a number of whitbread races. He's also got Murray Jones on board and his daughter Gemma, who is an Olympian. Gemma is actually on the Volvo 60. So there's a nice little competition between Murray and his daughter Gemma. But, there's some big names on board Cat Iron. Maddie Stephen, who has won 3 18-foot skiff JJ World Championships, and Alex Valings, who is also a veteran 18-foot skiff sailor and is the owner of SeaTech. But, I mean, these guys are all stuck in New Zealand, and it's actually okay.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the positives to, not being able to travel is you get some of these big names who might, often be overseas for this race, come in and do it. And we touched on it earlier, with the Volvo 65. And an interesting fact there is Daryl Whistling, who's done the ocean race 5 times and won it twice. and this is his first ever coastal. So, in a lot of yachting minds in New Zealand, he's a rookie to sailing in that aspect. But obviously, with the world titles that he's got with the ocean race, winning it twice and completing the race 5 times, it just goes to show the caliber of sailors we have out there.
So 5 laps around the world, but not even 119 nautical miles up to Russell. What an experience he's going to have. And we were talking earlier as well, is that, Australians like to compare the ocean race to being, it's just one more Hobart. It's just one more Hobart. Whereas the Kiwis explain it, it's just 5 more coastals before the finish line. So the coastal does get referenced a lot around the international yachting scene. And no doubt all of these high-profile sailors who are stuck in New Zealand because they can't travel will be eating up the fact that they can be on the start line for this 38th edition of the PIC Coastal Classic. And we can see now we're gearing up for the next start. The boats are starting to get make their way to the start line there, as we can see from the shot from North Head. Hopefully we can get a shot in a little bit closer and start pointing out and talking about some of the boats that we see in this division.
Yeah, so by my time, it looks like we're sort of within just around about 3 minutes until these guys get underway. So some good shots here of a couple of the 40-footers.
That's a Melges, one of the new Melges 40s, which is great to see them out there. There is 4 that are going to be in racing here in New Zealand. We've only got 3 out here racing for this edition of the race, though, but that's okay. We know that the owner of the 4th boat will be watching closely to see how the results pan out.
Yeah, I'm sure Howie's got his eye on this racing.
I wasn't going to mention the name.
Trying to figure out just what his competition's going to be like. But you can see another shot there of another 40-footer, Anarchy, in the background. And
the boat right in front that we can see there is actually Emotional Rescue, which is owned by Carl and Jasmine Whiting. Now, that is the only boat in the fleet to have won the race outright.
And one of the other things noticed here is have a look at the sail number, KZ. That just goes to show how much history there is out there on the water today, KZ. But Carl's no stranger to competition. He'll definitely be pushing hard to try and do as best as he can in this race as well.
Yep, he is an America's Cup sailor, an Olympian. He's now the new owner of Emotional Rescue. The boat won the race in 1989, and that was described as atrocious. There were 155 starters, only 65 finished. Gale force winds of northwesterly 70 knots on the nose. Most of the fleet opted to can that and go home, but Emotional Rescue pushed on and won the race in 1989. And it's pretty safe to say that Carl is that kind of sailor. He would just push on.
Yeah, nicknamed Tiny, but anyone who's met him, there's nothing tiny about him. That's a real power play, the claim to fame for winning that race. When everyone says this is getting a bit silly, let's go home. And you always get those enthusiasts that just go, nah, this will be one to tell the grandchildren about.
Enthusiast. It's a good word, isn't it?
Yeah.
And look, the other thing as well is that Emotional Rescue is now part of Whiting Sailing School. So if you want to get involved in sailing, you want to learn, you're watching this and you're just in awe of what's going on, Emotional Rescue and Whiting Sailing School, you can get yourself out there and start sailing. Just look them up, just Google Whiting Sailing School and you'll be good to go. Right, so we must be getting close now to the next start of the race.
I think we're within 1 minute.
You think?
I think so.
You think, or how's your watch going?
According to my time, we pan away from this shot here and we get another look at the start line. We should see the boat starting to rack up.
Now, you and I have sailed together a couple of times, and from memory, you never wore a watch out. So how do you actually know when a start is?
Oh, if you're not on time,
you're late.
You're late.
If you're not on time, you're late. Look at that. This is a driftathon. I can't even see any breeze on the water right now, even though we saw Emotional Rescue pushing nicely into that breeze. The boats that are on the start line now, it's drifty.
An interesting point of difference with this division here is you can see a lot more boats starting further down the line towards the far side on the city there. So to the left of our screen, more boats lining up down there, and I'm starting to think that the tactic there for those guys is just trying to put themselves in more consistent breeze to get out around North Head, but at some point they're going to have to cross over that channel. Remember, incoming tide, so it's a bit of a way up. Do you go for the pressure, or do you go for the current relief? And we saw earlier on in the day all the boats going for the current relief, but we're starting to see a bit more versatility in their race tactics and more boats starting down and more pressure, but just having to wear that current on the bow for a little bit longer.
I mean, when you're sailing in light airs and starting in light airs, it does get pretty stressful. You can see there the Sunfast 36 just unrolling. I mean, you want to basically put up as many sails as possible to get as much breeze as possible, but sometimes that's not going to pay off, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all, I mean, I always found like the last few times that I've done this race, it's such a long race that the decision making is very important. So there's definitely times on boats where you make rush decisions thinking that you have to, you got to get on the right sails at the right times, and all those decisions are very important, because if you get caught out and you make a bad call, or you're not on the right sail for lengths of time, that's what adds up to being the difference at the end of it. So, the start, like especially today, like we've talked about already, the start's so important, because if you can get off the line clean, you straight away put yourself in a position where you get the first pick of the breeze. And with a forecast that has breeze increasing sort of throughout most of the day, and maybe up until as late as like midnight tonight, the rich are going to get richer. So getting those tactics right at the start are absolutely critical.
You can see Katana there, they dropped their head sail and unfurled. I mean, they're going along quite nicely, but you can see the crew there, just sort of sitting nice and still. Well, actually, no, they're moving around now, getting those crew members down to leeward, which is the best option for them in this light breeze. This is a great boat. This is a fast boat, the Sunfast 360. Sunfast, I said, bleh. And that boat also did the Round North Island at the start of the year as well. Nigel, the skipper on board, he knows how to sail this boat. He knows how to sail it fast, and it's great to see that he's actually got a few more crew on board, not just sailing short-handed this time.
Yeah, I mean, it's all part of what we already talked about, the different numbers that we've got out there in terms of the crew makeups, with both mixed crews and all-female crews, and then we've got some double-handed entries as well. And so, there's a lot of variabilities out there for all the different boats, and everyone's going to face their own challenges. Obviously, we've talked about the conditions with it being light for everyone, but some people are going to have to do some pretty long shifts out there. The double-handed guys, if we're talking about a 30-hour race, those are going to be a lot of changeovers. So it's really important that those guys manage their sleep and their rest when they can, but also keep pushing as fast and hard as they can to try and do as well as possible in the race as well.
So what would you do? If you were on board, say, Anarchy, or you were on Georgia last year, the TP52, at what point in the race, after the start, would you guys start going into your watch system?
Well, fortunately for me, I've always finished.
You're probably not the good person to ask for this.
I've always finished this race in broad daylight, so I think if you ask for a shifter during that race, you'd probably get kicked off the boat pretty quickly. So. But no, in all seriousness, for these guys this year, that's definitely going to be part of the race for some of these teams. I think the TP52s. I caught up with Stewie Dodson from Mayhem earlier today, and most of their sort of predict win routings and whatnot are showing that they're going to arrive around sort of 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So I wouldn't be surprised if everyone just pushes on for that as well. But if it's as light as what we're seeing right now, they might actually be sending people downstairs to sort of set up. So yeah, I think you just take the rest where you can get it.
So looking now here at Force 11, Peter Shishka is on the helm. Quite an interesting character, Mr. Shishka. He's actually lost most of his eyesight. He actually sails the boat completely by feel, and based on the communication from the rest of his crew on telling him where everybody else is. Quite a marvellous sailor. He's been at this for years and years. He has a dedicated lineup of crew who just know what he needs to operate and to get the boat, going fast. I mean, that takes a lot of skill and talent to be able to sail the boat almost blind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a huge effort on their part. And I think it also goes to show just how passionate some people are about the sport. Something like that, which would put a lot of people off, just feeling maybe like they're not so safe or don't want to do it because they're maybe at a disadvantage. But you've got to be extremely passionate about it to not let that sort of knock you down and take your opportunities away. So full credit to him and those guys for sticking at it. And yeah, it's very impressive.
What is impressive is looking at these boats making their way out of Auckland from Devonport Wharf and heading up the 119 nautical mile course up to Russell. Now, let's just run through that course again. I know there's a few people who are still a little bit unsure of which way they would go. So just run us through how it's going to unfold.
Yeah, so they're starting off Devonport Wharf, which we've seen just in the and the pictures previously there. And then they've got to leave Little Barrier, the Mokohino Islands, and the Poor Knights reserves all to starboard before finishing off Russell Wharf. So it's a straightforward race in terms of the direction, but as we can sort of see, once the boats start making their way out of the harbour, there will be plenty of tactics involved. So the rough sort of estimate is they're going to be sailing and maybe tacking sort of out to Cowell Island, maybe even a little bit past that to Cape Rodney, and then from there on it should be a sort of a 10 to 12 knot lay through for most of the boats to the Cape Brett with a small downwind to the finish. But
how many do you reckon are going to go, oh, let's just stop at Cowell?
well, it's a good point that you raised, because I think there might be a few people that are sort of like that, and unfortunately for some of the boats out there, they come across problems after the start of the race, whether it might be to do with hoisting sails or braking equipment that sort of hinder their chances to go, and some will have to make the choice that they have to turn back based purely on safety requirements. So hopefully this year that's not the case. I mean, with the amount of breeze that there is, safety shouldn't, touch wood, come into it for any of these boats. But you might get a few boats that maybe just flick the motor on and say, this is it's a bit silly, but we're still keen to be a part of it, so let's go and enjoy the rest of the weekend up in the Bay of Islands.
Megan Kensington, who is the race officer for this race, talked about safety actually at the briefing and said it is obviously one of the most important parts of the race, and they do take it quite seriously. There was a change a couple of years ago whereby you don't actually have to carry a life raft on board for this race. However, to compensate for that, if you don't have a life raft or a dinghy on board, you must wear your life jacket and be clipped on the entire time whilst up on deck. And I think that's great. Safety is no accident. And it's great to see that the PIC Coastal Classic Organising Committee do take safety very, very seriously. So everybody out there will get up to Russell in one piece. Now, we did also get told, though, that the bar up there will be closing at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I think the first race is on to make sure you meet closing time.
Yeah, there might only be one or two boats that actually make it there before the bar shuts. But I think the more important question for everyone is going to be what time's it opening, because that's probably a bit closer to the target time for a lot of teams, I think. Like I said, with the Mayhem, who's one of the quicker 50-footers, they're looking at arriving around 1 to 2 a.m. So, they might be pushing it. You might be better to actually pull the handbrake a little bit and try and time your run to get in at 8:30, 9 a.m, depending on what time it opens again.
Look, the party at the end of it is just as important as the race in between. And we're just having a look at this boat here. It looks like they've got a little bit going on, a little bit messy there with unfurling.
Yeah, a bit of an issue with the furler there. So, usually that sort of tends to happen if one or two things is either the swivel up the top is got an issue and it's not unwinding at the top, or when they filled it up earlier on from last time they used it, they might not have done that very well, and it might get sort of too tight and back wind on itself, and that causes issues as well. So hopefully they get that sorted, otherwise it could be quite a long race for them, longer than what it's already forecasted to be.
Well, I mean, when we spoke to Bex, she did say, Bex Hornell, who was on the 65, that they thought they might be finished around 9 o'clock tonight, but you spoke to Salty and he had a different idea, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, like we said, when you're plugging these routing...
I have to stop you for a second because I've just spotted pandas.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh my goodness. All right, okay, so there's pandas on board this multi-hull, and I guess whatever gets you going in the morning, those are some very excitable pandas. Oh yeah.
Clearly bringing the fun to the race, that's for sure.
I don't have any words to say about that. I wonder what made them pick pandas.
Not sure, couldn't tell you, but
they're quite cuddly.
Yeah, definitely no objections on my part. Looks like they're set up for a great race.
Anyway, so back to the technical side of this whole game is making sure you beat the time. Make sure you get into Russell before the bar closes.
Yeah.
Or be there and time it perfectly for when it opens.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be a tricky one for all these guys. But luckily we've got race trackers and sort of nowcasting updates and all that, so we can kind of track how everyone's going throughout the race and get a bit more of an idea and insight as to what times we can kind of expect those boats to get in. But my guess is the first boat is going to be arriving around 11, maybe 12 o'clock tonight.
Shall we put some cash on that?
It depends how much. I've got no idea, to be honest. Like looking.
This is an absolute lottery. I mean, if you're ever going to talk about yacht race lottery, this is probably it, because normally you can pick who the first boat is going to be to finish. But this time around, nobody is confident in their pick. It doesn't matter who you talk to. Everybody's just like, it could be them or it could be them. Nobody is confident on who is going to be the first boat in. But we know that Bianca Cook, who runs the NZ Ocean Racing program, we know how much she wants to be the first boat in. This is their inaugural race, their actual maiden race for the boat before they head off for more training for the ocean race. But we're just here looking at these Division 2 boats here now, Zealous and Force 11. And, I mean, look, they're going along quite nicely. I mean, obviously a little bit slower than they'd probably prefer. They've got crew down, to leeward. But, I mean, you can't really complain with that. At least they're not going backwards.
Nah, and I think the pictures are kind of a little bit deceiving. They're actually probably going faster than what it looks like through the water, but over ground it's not quite as good as it looks there. So they're making their way out of the harbour, which is one thing, and they're moving, so you can't be too upset about it. And like we said, the race is going ahead, so it's definitely one way to be spending your long weekend. Could be worse.
And look, we've just got sight of the boat. In the top left-hand corner is Krakatoa, and that is being sailed single-handed by Matt Flynn. And Matt Flynn sailed the very first Coastal Classic on board with his dad, Alex, in 1982. So it's great to see that Matt's, back at it, continuing with his sailing, and I really do hope that is Matt. It does look like him. Can't quite see. Yes, it is. Well done. I picked it.
Nice.
With my dodgy eyesight, I picked it. Fantastic. It's great to see. And look, his sister, Emily, is part of the organising committee for the race as well. And this is a huge family affair and a traditional race for him and his family. And we're getting ready for the next start. Now, these are the big boats.
Yeah, so this is where a lot of the tighter racing that you're going to see is. We can see these guys getting set up and good spread across the line early on. But for me, the interesting point here is, there's a lot of 40-footers. The 40-footers, we've got a couple of new additions to the sailing scene here in Auckland, and they haven't done a lot of lining up with the likes of, your Anarchies and Carreras and some of those other 40s. So it's going to be very interesting. They're all going to have different strengths and weaknesses, and I think it'll be pretty clear early on. Maybe expect the Maldives to be slightly quicker upwind, sort of once the breeze maybe gets above 12 knots, but under that it could be tight.
V5, you can just see there the dark blue, navy blue 52 in picture there. Just been purchased by Brian Peterson, who formerly had Rantan 2, which unfortunately was lost in May 2018 en route to LA for the Transpac. But Brian has just bought V5, which was previously owned by David Nathan, and then before him, Simon Hull as well, who's also on the Coastal Classic committee. So BP is eager to go with V5. Beautiful boat, nice big cannon keel on that one as well. And, he's actually a bit of a force. BP is a bit of a silent achiever.
Yeah, and V5's a good boat. Obviously, there's been some really good racing in the 50-foot fleet for the last couple of years. You've got the TPs, which, have been kind of pretty good all round. But I remember when I've done some of these Coastal Classic races, V5, when it's a tight reach, that boat's pretty deadly as well. So them and Wyatt are both quite strong when it's tight reaching. So we can see these guys lining up now. There's a good spread across the line. And for the 40s here, you're really just trying to pick a spot where you get away clean and you don't have one of those 50s coming over the top here.
You can see they're stuck back. You probably can't see in view here, but Miss Scarlett, this is their first race since doing the Round North Island at the start of the year. It's a water ballast boat, 52-footer. They're a little bit deep on the line there, but hopefully they can recover from that. You can also see in there as well, Icebreaker, the Big Don't Argue, Carrera, and just we can see there a white hull with the black sails. That's one of the Melgies, and I'm pretty sure that is...
Is that Steve or Aaron maybe?
I think that's Aaron.
Looks like they got away nicely anyway, whoever it is, and you can sort of see how much more powered up they are. So those boats are pretty lightweight, I believe. They're canned and keel as well, and twin rudders, so they'll perform pretty well, I think. But a little bit further down the line, you can see Mayhem there just getting away, and they've got what looks like a fractional zero fully wicked up, so they're starting to get in some pretty good breeze as well now.
But I definitely think that Melgy's there. They've had a bit of a glamour start, and actually over the top of another one, as I know who's underneath there, Formula One underneath there, outstanding. And then we just have a quick look here at the sale number. Actually, 042. Yes, that is Checkmate. And that is the current Commodore of the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron, Aaron Young, with his regular crew on board. So he's come from a cruisy, racy Beneteau to a high-performance Melgy's 40. So big difference in what he's used to on the racing scene.
I hear the boats are, whilst they're fast, they are quite tricky. It's like I said, a canned and keel before, which is, a little bit different, especially for someone that's coming out of a boat that's traditionally a bit more of a sort of cruiser. So, it's not so easy to just slot in and get used to driving a boat that performs with a keel that, isn't sort of straight up and down. It does change, depending on the amount of heel the boat has, and the feel's, very different. So, sailing the boat obviously very nicely. Got a good start there, and pretty straightforward at the moment. So nice start for Aaron.
Yeah, he'd be happy with that. I mean, it's not normal that he's that kind of aggressive on the start line. We saw that. See, they're wired in the background as well, another 52. And we've got Formula One there as well. These guys actually look like they had a really good start.
Yeah, Aaron and the team have obviously absolutely nailed that. And I sort of heard that a couple of differences with that class as well. But I think they're having 2 females on the boat at all times, and no professional sailors. So, definitely a class that is pushing the involvement and the accessibility to sailing more so than trying to, keep the costs more effective so that they can get more racing in and have a higher standard without, people sort of spending
way too much money.
Yeah.
So he's having a look there at Formula One, which is skippered by Carl Smith. That's a Nelson Castro 53. They're quite irregular out here for these longer races as well, and the short haul run races as well. Actually, you know what? They just do lots of sailing. They're enthusiasts as well. You can see they've had the red boat, Miss Scarlet, not having the greatest of starts, but that's okay. That's skippered by William Goodfellow, and no doubt he'll push his crew to get them in a much better position.
Yeah, we've touched on it today just a number of times how important that start is, because you already see like Miss Scarlet there, a lot further back than they would have liked to have been, and some of these other 50s and even the 40-footers who got away cleaner. Kia Kaho should be, very quick in the lighter airs, sort of upwind and this stuff. Those guys are, in so much disturbed air back there, and unfortunately for them, it's not going to get any easier. They're following the leader, so to speak, and they're going to end up sailing more distance and less wind most of the way. So nice shot here of the Mayhem.
Mayhem is definitely going to be the 52 to beat, though, isn't it? I mean, these guys are a class act. You've got Harry Dodson on the helm of this one. I mean, they're always fast. They're always up there. I think I can see Tim Snedden on the bow there. Hopefully, he just smiled. He heard his name.
It's almost like you can hear it.
It's almost like if he gave me a wave, then I'd be impressed.
There's Dallas Bennett on the main. Stu Dodson's on there somewhere. I think as well, Daggy's on there trimming maybe.
That's James Dagg calling the shots.
And there's Kit there as well on the back. So everyone looking like they're having a good time. Tony, we see you.
We can't wave back. And there you go. You can see a little bit of pressure that they've got there, calling for the crew to do some hike down. And there's the big Sneddy there, just getting all of his weight over the rail. That'll make a huge difference.
Yeah, he's a big man. Big man. Probably hoping they had a bit more wind, but you already see how quickly these boats power up. We've already sort of touched on them having a fractional zero there, and so a lot more sail area. But these shots here are great.
Tom Saunders,
buddy, right in the thick of it.
Tom Saunders, a laser sailor, trying to make his mark on the New Zealand sailing team, standing on North Head, observing the yachts. Perhaps he's actually looking at an option to maybe tack over and
just
become a keelboat sailor.
He just can't help himself. He needs to get out of the limelight. He's blocking the view. But you can see here from the shots from North Head just how light it is as these boats going around the corner. We talked about how the breeze would be light right underneath North Head in the shadow, but it's actually looks like it's extending further out than you would have thought. So a lot of these guys really struggling to get out of the harbour, and doesn't look like it's going to get any better anytime soon.
And there they go, New Zealand Ocean Racing. Bianca Cook and her team. Daryl Wisling as well, competing in his very first Coastal Classic, as we talked about earlier. He's done 5 laps of the world, won the ocean race twice, but this is his first PIC Coastal Classic.
Bucket list. It's a bucket list.
It is a bucket list item. It is like, so I know a guy. Okay, I know this guy that has said to his wife, I'll marry you as long as I get every single Labor Day weekend off so I can do the Coastal Classic. And she agreed to that. How cool is that? That's how much it is in the Kiwi blood.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. Didn't you also say that he might not actually be out there? He might have pulled out? She probably thinks that he's here. I've probably thrown him under the bus here.
I think he might have his tracker on someone else's boat. But there you go. This is the New Zealand Ocean Racing team competing in their very first race. And this will be a kickstart for their campaign as they head towards competing and representing New Zealand in 2021. Great to see how much work has actually gone into getting that team. It's a complete New Zealand family of people who have actually made that possible. And we know that Bianca will be very, very proud right now to have them out racing. She's got her dad on board, Ian Cook from Yachting Developments, and her sister Paige as well. And Tony Ray is also part of the program, and he is on board. And no doubt he'll be the medic because he's always the medic. He likes to get his first aid kit out whenever he can.
It's a cool story, isn't it? Obviously, the Cook family have done so much for the sport, especially in recent times. We talked about their involvement with the Youth America's Cup, which unfortunately fell through, and he's continued supporting both his daughters, throughout the last few years, but especially this year with the New Zealand Ocean Race team with Bianca. But it's great that Paige is on there as well. I've done a lot of sailing with Paige, and she's an awesome trimmer. So she'll be chomping at the bit to be involved in sailing on the boat as well. So it's a great story from a family that's given a lot to the sport, and it's cool that they're getting the opportunity to be at the forefront of it in the ocean race this year.
Absolutely. They've also got Gemma Jones, who's an Olympian, on board. Thomas Rutter, who is really keen to be on board for the race, next year. And Georgia Schofield is their on-board reporter, and Georgia will be, pushing some photos and videos back through the official channels as she gets herself prepared as well to sail around the world.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's funny how a lot of those names that you sort of hear are tied to an older generation of guys who are sort of legends in the sport. We talked about, Josh Salthouse, who's, been doing some of the navigation on board the boat and trimming as well. And obviously his dad's got a long record with the race and plenty of editions on the ocean race as well. And then, Thomas Rudder, obviously the son of Owen Rudder and Events Clothing and all the around the world sailing.
BMG Clothing now. Sorry, we'll announce their new name.
All the all the round the world races that OC's done as well, and Tony Ray's still there helping out the next generation of guys as well. So it really is a cool story of some of the more experienced guys who've done this race a lot and paving the way for the next generation of guys and literally doing the race sort of with them here today and setting them up for the future as well.
So V5 there, a TP52. Oh no, it's actually TP. Yeah, it is.
It's a TP52 main, yeah. So it's obviously a canting keelboat V5, but see something we've seen. 52
foot in length. So when we say the number behind the name usually signifies what length they are.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a cool fleet, and we've talked about that boat, but you can sort of see how difficult it is for them trying to get out of the harbour at the moment. They're just not quite in as much breeze as you've got wired down there to leeward, but
all the crew down to leeward on that boat. You can see there.
The Melders 40 there on the left is still hanging right up there with the front with the 50 footers. So it's doing nicely.
It's a little light, flappy. I'd be quite frustrated right about now, because you're so keen to start making gains, but getting around North Head and, getting into the channel and getting that clear air, that would probably be the most frustrating part, I reckon.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like we said, there's nothing worse. Normally in this race, the bigger boats who start last have no problems kind of picking their way past the boats at the front. They get through it quite easily, but with it being an upwind sort of leg early on in this race, they're sailing through a lot of disturbed air, and so there's a lot of variables involved. It's very difficult for them to make their way through the fleet, which is nice for the front runners, the boats that started first, because they'll be sailing around with a lot more company than they probably would be used to, and it's good for the spectators as well. They get to see a lot more boats sailing in close quarters, and it looks more exciting and better for the pictures as well.
Yeah, great to see people. They're congregating on North Head, checking it out. No doubt making their own commentary calls and their own tactics, saying, I probably wouldn't have gone that way. I probably would have gone that way. There's always some great advice and opinions from onshore. You can see there again, another shot of V5. One of the crew just starting to make their way out to the windward side, but still very light. You can tell that that's BP on the wheel. He has a very, very strategic way that he steers his boat. And here we go, looking at finally got some multi-hull action. And if we can get a little graphic up there to tell us which boat that was. We can't quite make out the sail number.
Doesn't look like they're going to be flying a hull anytime soon, does it?
Definitely no hull flying, at least not in the first part of this race, but who knows what might happen. Forecasts are known to be changed.
You can see Timberwolf, the trimaran that we talked about earlier in the broadcast, just setting up down on the far side of the screen there as well. So they're making their way out of the harbour at the moment. That's the green trimaran. It looks like an 8.5 metre just to the nearer side of them. So the multi-hulls are underway.
Multi-hulls have started, and I know for an absolute fact that on the 60-foot trimaran, Romanza, they were going to kick off their day with a lamb roast.
Wow, that sounds pretty luxurious, doesn't it? No complaints there.
It is the perfect mix. I think just coming up here now to Romanza is that they are the perfect mix between cruising and racing, because they can go fast as a trimaran, a 60-foot trimaran, but they also have all the creature comforts that you'd need in a cruising boat. Just having a look here now at, I'm pretty sure that is Mr. Kite. Yep, yeah. That's a Cape 40. And that has got Nathan Williams on the helm. His wife, Gillian Williams, who is the Rear Commodore of the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron, she is the helm on Ika Moana that Mel Homer is on, which is the all-female crew. So great to see husband and wife out here racing against each other. And you can see there on the bow in the red pants and the jacket, I'm pretty sure that's Zib. Yep, Zib Campbell. She's a regular on board. Great to see him and his regular crew out here racing. Mr. Kite, a bit of a force as well. I mean, he's quite a tactical sailor, old Nathan Williams.
Yeah, we actually had a good tussle with them last year in the Coastal. We were going quite well until we blew up an A3 and trawled a couple other sails at almost at the same time. They managed to get past us and never look back. But, we've done a lot of close quarter racing with them when I was sailing the Anarchy and up at Bay of Islands Race Week. And it's a really cool division, that 40 fleet division, and we've talked about the Melges being the new addition to that fleet, and that's going to make the 40-foot fleet even stronger. So I'm looking forward to seeing just how those boats sort of line up with some of these guys early on in the Coastal.
And there is Timberwolf. Liz Alzoni has done a fantastic job of restoring and relaunching Timberwolf. She basically brought the boat back from the dead, and she's been spending hours and hours at Okahu Bay on the dry dock there, working on the boat. She does have Gria Houston, who is the Commodore of the Mullingar Yacht Club of New Zealand, the organisers of the PIC Coastal Classic, on board. And Liz, I know herself, she was absolutely fizzing for the start of this race. She was so excited, and it's great to see the boat out there racing. And it's just another really great way to show that, Kiwis always do come together, in getting boats back out racing. Timberwolf, again, is a testament to all of the skills and the technology and the knowledge of the marine industry here in New Zealand. And it's great to see another boat back out racing, which would normally have just been sitting on a mooring somewhere, dying a slow death. But
yeah, and it's about investing in the history and the story. A lot of, and not quitting as well. A lot of people could have just gone out and bought a new boat, and that would have been one way to do it. But yeah, restoring the heritage behind a boat like that and keeping the story alive is definitely pretty cool. So we just see here coming up now to the orange sail with the bird on it. That is Katuku, and Cat-Eye and Katuku are pretty much the same boats, and I know the competition between these two is fierce as. The boats are stacked to the waterline with talent, aren't they? There's a lot of there's a lot of very, very high caliber sailors there, and what was kind of a bit more of a casual sort of couple of boats that sort of got together and raced every now and again has been completely blown out of the water with trying to one-up each other whenever they can.
They've listed Pete Geary as being on the helm, a true icon of New Zealand sailing. No doubt the beers will already have been cracked on board Katuku, and they'll be looking around for Cat Eye and Apache as well. It's going to be such a great race between these three beautiful, highly spec'd multi-hulls, and as you say, fully stacked with talent.
Yeah, when you've got guys like Joey Allen floating around, there's plenty of burglars out there that are trying to play it down as much as they can, but really they're out there doing one thing only, and that's to race hard. And
you can hear Joey Allen coming though, so Joey's not going to be able to sneak up on anybody because you can always hear him before you see him.
Yeah, absolutely. He always, like I said, he always plays it down. He makes it out like he's just out there having a good time with his mates, but he wants to win more than anyone else on the water for sure. So you can always hear him screaming from the commentary booth there.
Well, luckily he's not on that boat. He's actually further away on Apache.
There he is.
But look at that, what a great sight. So we've actually got all of the boats have now started the race, the 38th edition of the PIC Coastal Classic. And look, even though it was a bit slow and, not as exciting as last year's, ridiculously heinous 30-odd knots, from the west.
Well, it was fun to start with, but it got hairy pretty quickly.
Oh, my God, it was so dicey out there. But, look, a stark contrast, 2020 has dished out some pretty interesting challenges for us, and I think the 38th edition of the Coastal, the Great Race North, is no different. And what a sight! If you are out watching on shore and looking at this, what a fantastic view. You can see Carrera. Now, I just got a note from John Meadowcroft. Unfortunately, he's actually not on board today. He's got Jens steering the boat. Jens is a regular crew member on board, so he's calling the shot, and it looks like they're sailing single-handed at the moment. That's how much they've got their crew all down to leeward. So I reckon that breeze has really died off now from exactly what John said it was going to do. It was going to be drifty out of the start. Yeah,
well, like we said earlier, with the rich getting richer, it's not often you'd see a 40-footer in front of the likes of Kia Kaha and Wyatt and whatnot. Some of the 50-footers, at this point of the race, they've been sailing for close to half an hour now since they started, and to cross in front of a couple of 50-footers is just goes to show how if you get the tactics right, then you're pretty well set up. And speaking of tactics, what a race we've got here. Anarchy, it's AJ Reid, tucked in tightly to leeward of Mr. Kite. So it looks like the Anarchy team trying to squeeze off Mr. Kite early on.
Those two love to have a battle.
And they had, like we said, they had Carrera just underneath them. So the 40-footers having a real good old tussle early on in this one.
Wow, that is definitely Anarchy will always keep their eye on Mr. Kite. Those two boats just constantly backwards and forwards with each other, and neither likes to lose to each other. So eyes will be wide open on board both those boats. So we have this great drone shot, seeing the boats heading upwind, tacking out of the harbour. Tack. There's going to be a lot of tacking out there.
Yeah, you can already see there Anarchy having to deal a little bit with a tricky situation with one of the boats further in front. So like we've said, it's about trying to pick your line through the fleet as best you possibly can. You want to get through those wind shadows and out to clear air as fast as possible. And if you do that well, it's going to be a much easier race for you going up the coast.
Wow, look at that. Don't you wish you were out there? Maybe just a little bit. Come on, just a little bit. Maybe. I wish I was out there.
Maybe for the start, I would have been keen to do the start and maybe race to North Head and then.
Well, maybe we could have done a race to Cowow.
Yeah, well, maybe. Well, maybe some people are going to do a race to Cowow.
I think some people will. Cowow is calling. You can see their red boat, then IRC 52. Miss Scarlett just come into view there. And just...
Is that full throttle crossing?
Just absolutely going to just dump straight on top of them there. Is that...
Deep throttle, sorry, not. Is that deep throttle?
No, that's not deep throttle. Deep throttle has the graphics down the side.
That's them in the background.
Yeah, I think that's them in the background. No, that's Frenzy in the background from Tauranga. One of two boats from Tauranga competing in this year's race. No, I'm not sure who that one is there, but... oh, no, that's Serena.
Yes.
There you go. That is Serena with Josh Adams and Porky Ryan Parkin on board. That was
Porky's
a nice
on board,
little,
is he?
yeah,
Oh,
Porky.
nice.
Yeah, so that was a nice little dump that they did on Miss Scarlett, and Miss Scarlett's going to throw one back, but they got no right. So moving right along.
Great shot, aerial shot here from the drone, looking back down the harbour. You can see Navy ship in the background there. That's North Head on the right-hand side of your screen. And you can see everyone trying to get in close to that shoreline to get out of the current, hook into this left-hand pressure as they head up past the North Shore and hopefully lay out to sort of Rangi Light.
You can see in the distances there's our 2 Navy frigates also saying a farewell to the fleet. I mean, everybody comes out to watch the start of the Coastal. It's a great race, North. It's a great race.
Yeah, we saw probably the best vantage point for everyone is that North Head on the hillside there. So it's nice to see plenty of spectators out as per usual, even though there's a little bit of rain, but looking at nice shots here at Kia Kaha.
Kia Kahu is sailing back to their, quite close to their home port. They are from Opua in the Bay of Islands. And look, those guys delivered the boat down on Thursday. And here they go, racing home.
Definitely one to keep an eye on in this division, Kia Kaha, because it's always gone pretty well in the light compared to some of the other TPs. It's not quite as wide in the back section as some of the newer model TP52s, and that sort of seems to suit them sailing upwind in the lighter airs. So it could be a race for them, and like you touched on there, they should have a lot of local knowledge coming around the Brett and up into the bay.
Nice little roll tack there. See how they put all their crew down to leeward before Chris put the helm down to tack over. But yeah, no, look, those guys definitely have a local advantage when they're sailing, especially around the Brett, where it can get quite dicey, and then into the Bay of Islands. I mean, those guys know it well. They sail there all the time, and they are also regulars down on the racecourse here in New Zealand. So Chris Hornell and his crew, great to see them committing to the sport, not just in their home port, but also around the country as well. Another great drone shot there of the fleet, looking at the back end of the fleet, the bigger boats that started at 10 o'clock. Oh, no, I have a little bit of envy. I think because it's going to be light and it's not going to be heinous.
Yeah.
I guess if you're going to do one at all, sometimes having it a little bit lighter is always a bit nicer.
Do you think you'll have envy tonight when you're tucked into bed and these guys are out slogging it out doing 4 or 5 knots?
I'll check the tracker just to make sure everyone's all okay, and then I'll just put my head on my pillow and have a great sleep.
Yeah.
Look at that fantastic shot up there of North Head. Look at that view over to Rangitoto Island. And, oh gosh, I mean, I'm a little bit in love with New Zealand. Can you tell?
It's not bad, is it? There's pretty lucky to have this to be our backyard, especially with some of the shots you see there. But looking out to the left-hand side of the screen and beyond, it looks like there's a bit of rain coming their way. So
sucks to be them, but we're nice and dry here at the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron. But yes, I can see that nice little rain cloud. Don't worry though, we saw lots of people buying and upgrading some gear last night from Harry Hull from Zyke. So there's going to be plenty of Zyke gear on show, all nice and crispy and new. If you're going to wear in your new kit, you may as well do it in the rain.
Yeah, I'd say the sea boots from Zyke will be pretty popular on a day like today with the rain starting to come down. And, in particular, a lot of people probably using that Predict Wind app. You can use the app on your mobile devices to get all the updates. You can see the trackers. You can see people's weather routings, get predictions on how long it's going to take each boat to get there. And above, more importantly, you probably get the rain forecast to figure out when it's a good time to pop downstairs. And
so how much, would you use technology when it's a light race? Would you tend to, move more towards technology or open your eyes and look outside the boat for what's going on?
Well, I think long-term technology is always a winning tool to use. So, a lot of these guys we talked about earlier would have a pre-race plan. So they would have had, they've been looking obviously for the last few days at all the different routes possible to take. And we talked about, Predict Wind being one of those tools. There's a bunch of different models that you can look at which give different predictions as well. So, those models are taking into account, the weather systems that are developing around the place, right up until sort of 8:30 this morning, where they probably would have got their last update to make sort of a race plan. But they're looking at all the nowcasting spots around to use off the weather beacons to best predict sort of what the routes are to take.
And there is a pace sheet there. Oh, What a beautiful looking multi-hull with their brand new Doyle sails on board. Earl Williams on the helm, he's no stranger to the spotlight. He knows a few things about ocean racing and coastal racing. Joey Allen's probably already been put downstairs and told to be quiet.
He'll probably be calling the swing on the bow, won't he, Joey?
He can just sit in there. I can imagine with his head in his hands going, nobody's listening to me. Why is nobody listening to me? But look, it's great to see a fierce battle amongst these beautiful multi-hulls between Kadai and Katuku and Apache there, as you can see on screen. Apache just coming up onto the stern, of Miss Scarlet. And we will see a lot of overlaps, a lot of crosses. This is an upwind race. The back of the fleet will have to work their way through to the front of the fleet. So lots of action. But it also is good for those weekend warriors who don't do a lot of sailing, who can actually be on the same line and be in the presence of some of these bigger boats and these fancy-looking machines that we've got racing out here. I was actually hoping for a bit of a flyby for some international visitors, but maybe it's a little bit too light.
Yeah, well, doesn't look like there'd be too much excitement out there for some of those faster boats, but you never know. It's a shame, we talked about it yesterday, it's a shame that race course that they're literally on right now has all of a sudden been ruled out. That's painful.
Yeah, it's a little bit painful, and obviously a topic and a conversation for another time. It's turning a little bit political, that one, with regards to the America's Cup racecourse areas. But we are here for the 38th edition of the PIC Coastal Classic, having another look down there at that great view from North Head as the fleet start to make their way. Well, they've already started to make their way 119 nautical miles all the way up to Russell. A beautiful township, Russell. It's a classic little village, and it used to be the capital of New Zealand. Yeah,
long time ago now, but it's like you said, it's not just about the race up there. It's about the events and the activities that happen once you get there. And we talked about everyone sort of arriving, more on Saturday for the first time probably than the Friday. So there'll be a lot happening up there. Like I said, I spoke to Josh Salthouse earlier, who's been sailing the Volvo 65, and they're taking a bunch of local sailors out, young kids tomorrow, to give them a bit of a taste of what sailing on a Volvo ocean race boat looks like. And it's great to see that they're helping out the community and the next generation up there. So
fantastic.
Plenty of different things like that are going to be happening once the boats arrive.
Just having a look here at the Predict Wind tracker. You can view the tracker direct from the Coastal Classic website. Click on a boat and it will show you who it is. Now that's Harry Dodson, which is actually Mayhem. So he's just put his name instead of the boat name. So it's all about Harry on Mayhem. And there you go, Formula One, that's how it's meant to be. Shows their division, shows their course, and shows their speed. 2.9 knots currently on Formula One. Painful. And we'll click another one, Wired, 2.6. Oh, well,
grim. It's grim, isn't it?
It's grim. At least they're not going backwards, but you can view the race, the tracker on the Coastal Classic website, or you can download the Predict Wind tracking app and you can follow the race for as long as it goes. Sometimes, depending on cell coverage, a boat might pop in and out of range. It doesn't mean that they've turned their tracker off. It just means that they've popped out of cell phone coverage range, but they will pop back up and it will show the rest of their track. And there's Silken, which is another one of the Mel G's 40s, going at 4.3 knots, a little bit faster than the 52, which is great to see. No doubt the competition between Division 1A and 1B is also going to be fierce. They don't just focus on their own divisions. They like to spread the love around and, hate on each other and get aggressive on each other, which is always great to see. Anarchy, 3.1 knots. No doubt AJ will be stressed to the eyeballs with that low speed. He likes to go fast, that one. There you go, Epsom Salt's one of the 8.5s in the fleet, another multi-hull. And actually Attitude is racing as well. And Attitude actually holds the 8.5 metre record. I'm just going to get here to my notes here. Attitude, which is an open 8.5, they hold their class record of 8 hours, 1 minute and 6 seconds. But that was way back in 2009.
Yeah, that's impressive. Definitely, obviously different conditions back then to what we have today, but it's a nice boat. It's definitely one of the quicker 8.5s.
So that's Epsom Salts, who is in the same division as Attitude. which is very exciting to see. We are getting towards the end of our coverage for the live stream here. I tell you what, though, it's been absolutely fantastic watching the start of this great historical race. 38 years in the making, 2 more years and we get to 40. Wow, this race has been around longer than you've been alive.
Yeah, by quite some. Like I said, I've done the race almost 4 times now, and every time it's been different.
Hang on. Almost 4 times.
Well,
what happened?
No, I've done it.
You finished it 4 times? So what was the almost comment?
We almost didn't finish it. I'd say last time we almost didn't finish, but we did.
So you've done it on.
Done it on
Temptation,
Georgia. Vodafone, the Almost 60, and then last year with Anarchy.
I reckon that we should put a challenge to you that you should actually do the race in one of the slower divisions. I reckon you should get like on a Ross 930 or a Fast 727 or an Elliott 7. I reckon you actually need to really experience this race. I tell you what, the guys in the smaller boats do get value for money though.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, but like we said earlier, it's a different challenge. You know, you face a different bunch of challenges throughout the race, and everyone is going to face a lot of those today and tomorrow throughout the race. Obviously, the lighter air is taking a lot longer. Mentally, that's pretty wearing on the body to be constantly having to focus and be sleep deprived and operate when you're tired. That's quite a challenge that some of these guys wouldn't have faced in the last couple of years. Like we said, finishing in broad daylight most years, and now all of a sudden it doesn't look like anyone's going to finish in daylight. It's a completely different race. So it's going to be interesting to see how they navigate their way through those challenges, and hopefully, all going well, no one has any problems.
You can see their shot there of Liz. She gave the camera a wave just before. She would be absolutely fizzing right now. I mean, she was running around yesterday, just the biggest smile on her face, so excited to get out there and look at Timberwolf go. She has done an outstanding job on getting that boat race ready. Great for the Kiwi marine industry as well.
Yeah, it's nice to see that woman pontoon popping out of the water and flying nice and high. So looking like she's in a pretty good patch of wind there, and that boat, you can see how quickly it accelerates. It's moving along quite nicely.
Great shot there with the drone overhead. Fantastic. Well, look, I mean, that's pretty much it now. I mean, the boats have all started. We haven't really seen anybody decide to turn around and come home. So I think everyone's committed to just having a great weekend away. It is a long weekend here in New Zealand, and it's great that, we are one of the very few countries that's actually able to host races like this. Like you said earlier, no worries about how many crew you've got on board. We're allowed to have a party up north, which is fantastic. But obviously everybody was told, check in, make sure you scan your the contact tracing app, keep a record of where you've been and what has happened so that we can keep New Zealand trucking along nicely as it's been going.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it there we've talked a lot about obviously the sailors, but there's obviously a large contingent of support going up to the bay via car to, drop off supplies and whatnot to the boats when they arrive. A lot of people's better halves are going to be making that trip and greeting them at the other end. So, yeah, a huge contingent of people from the sailing community, both on and off the water, heading up to the Bay of Islands this weekend.
So fantastic also for tourism, great to keep the country pumping through, keep the economy going, and see there, hang on. Well, the cameras are everywhere. No, okay, there we go. So having a look down on this boat now, I'm going to get you to guess which one this is. I'm just going to flick to my little sheet.
I'm going to say it's probably around 70 foot long, 80 foot, maybe more.
A little bit more than that.
100?
Oh, maybe.
It's one of the big ones.
It is one of the bigger ones. Such a beautiful view across the harbour there here in Auckland. Now, look, we will probably wrap it up there for the 38th edition of the PIC Coastal Classic, but we will just run through again. This race is definitely not possible without all of the hard-working team of the Multi-Hull Yacht Club of New Zealand and the volunteers, but also those sponsors: PIC Insurance Brokers, Predict Wind, Doyle Sales, B&G, 36 Degrees Brokers, Mount Gay Rum, Zyke, Yachting New Zealand, Bernard International, Burns Co, Duke of Marlborough Hotel, Edmund Hillary Clothing, Sage Restaurant at Pararoa Bay, James Boat Valet, Foster's Ship Chandlery with Eco Store and Boating New Zealand. Wow, I need a breath after that.
Yep, well, it's been exciting, hasn't it?
It's like seriously intoxicatingly exciting. Slow motion yachting is where it's at, and this is what we've got today.
Yeah, but just remember for everyone, you can keep following the racing. Just because we're peeling out this morning doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to follow all the racing via the tracking apps and on the websites as well. So, if you're keen to follow and spend the rest of your Friday afternoon or even early Saturday morning keeping up with the progress of the boats, then it's definitely possible and highly recommend it.
Yeah, boats will be sending in their updates, their photos, their videos, their text messages, everything to the media team of the Coastal Classic. That will go up on their Facebook page and on their website and on Instagram with the hashtag PIC Coastal Classic. Right, we're going to maybe just get a little word from our director to let us know what's happening next. But hey, look, that was a great start.
Great start, and hopefully plenty more action to come.
And let's just keep our fingers crossed that everybody gets there safely. Everybody gets there before the bar closes or within a decent amount of time before the bar reopens. And let's then push on for 2021 and pray for a little bit more breeze.
Absolutely.
All right, now, Steely, are you going to be a better half and drive up, or are you going to go and hit the golf range?
I'm going for a golf tournament.
So you're off to go play golf. I am going to be heading up to the Bay of Islands to do some dockside interviews with all of the happy, stinky sailors up on the dock in Russell. It'll be good. And then we've got the prize giving up there tomorrow night as well. Look, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We had people tuning in from around the world. I know that there were some people in England, Germany, on the Isle of Wight, in Australia, and in the US. And it's great to see everybody tuning in to the great race here in New Zealand. Chris Steele, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for timing your exit from managed isolation so that you could come and sit here and commentate.
I wouldn't have missed it. I had to make sure we were out in time for that. So, no, it's been a real pleasure and just really cool to see all the boats out there and able to sail in the current climate of the world. So, yeah, we're pretty lucky down here in New Zealand that the great race continues and goes for another year. So, awesome work for everyone involved in the PIC Coastal Classic and safe travels to everyone going up.
All right, that is it from us. I'm Sue Ellen, this is Steely, and that is it for the start of the 38th edition of the PIC Coastal Classic. We'll see you next time.
No, you gotta do these, you gotta do the winch.
Oh, yeah. The winch.
Okay, hang on. Up the halyard.
Well, that could be rude. Yeah. What about this one? What about this one? There's the winch.
I like this one. We're on the wheel.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I like this. On the wheel. You'd be really cool.
Oh, hang on. On the wheel. Having a drink.
Yeah. Champagne sailing.
Now, speaking of champagne sailing, I hear you have jumped into the cruising division.
Yes, we have, because we looked at the forecast and we went, if we actually go in the division that we're going to go in, we're not even going to get to the bay. So we might as well do it so we can at least motor and get there for the end of the weekend.
Right, so before we go any further, this is Mel Homer, and Mel is actually on board Ika Moana in an all-girls crew for the 38th edition of the PIC Coastal Classic. Mel,
Yeah.
why all girls?
Well, it's just the way it ended up, really. We were trying to get my teenage son to come along, but he got a better offer, so he's not gone.
You mean he didn't want to hang out with a bunch of cool chicks?
He didn't want to come with his mum, and I really, really tried. Oh, we've done it. This is our third time doing it. I think we have like about every 2 years we do it. And it's always been all females. We've got three women, 2 kids, and it's going to be lots of fun.
So how do you guys actually select your crew when it comes to something like the Coastal Classic?
Well, it's very, very, very difficult to select the crew. We basically do a Facebook message saying, who wants to do it? And we go, yeah. And we're in.
And you're in.
Yeah.
So if I had got that message, I could have said, yeah,
You could have been in it too, yeah. Like we've all got like between us we've probably got like 100 years of experience between us. No, sorry, only
That's
like 5
actually-
years
no,
really,
that's-
because we're
100
pretty new to
years
the
is not-
sport.
100
Yeah.
years is not that much considering
know.
some of the crews are like,
Three of us.
so this is the 38th year, and there's some crew that have actually done 37 races.
Wow. See, I'm not. See, I've definitely graduated from doing the bow on like a young 11 to being at the back of the boat in a cruising boat where I don't even think I'm going to get wet.
That is the way to do the Coastal Classic. Now, you are also a huge advocate for women in sport.
Yes.
What would your advice be to any female who's actually looking to get involved in sailing?
Just do it. You just got to get out there and do it. I think sometimes people get a little bit intimidated by it because they look at it and go, oh, it looks so difficult. You've just got to get out there because I think most women, or everybody in sailing is really supportive of getting more people into it because we love it. We want to sort of, get people into the cult.
We do love it. Is a cult.
Yeah.
Sailing is probably one of the best cults out there
Yeah.
because you can, well, we probably won't go into that. But anyway, sailing is fantastic.
And you should get into it now because then when the America's Cup is on, you can watch it and go, oh, yeah,
I do that.
what an attack there. Yeah.
Mel Homer, it's so great to have you as part of the Eco Moana team, the all-female team, one of 3 in this year's Coastal Classic, the PIC Coastal Classic, which is its 38th year. Best of luck out there.
Thank you.
Now, just one sneaky little question.
Yep.
How much champagne have you got on board?
Well, we are definitely rattling. And we're having a roast dinner on the way out too, because what's a coaster without a roast on the rail?
This girl's got it sorted. Have fun.
I will.
See you up there. Feeling rather privileged to be sitting on board this very special Davidson 55 emotional rescue with its new owners, Carl and Jasmine Whiting. Guys, this boat has an epic history, which includes winning the 1989 race. You've done some research on that race. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, well, when we bought the boat, I thought I'd better get up to my history. I mean, I know, it's such a legendary boat, and I'd sailed on it as a kid, but it was launched in '89, so the year that it went in the water, it got the first. It was the first monohull to win a line on his Beetle catamaran or multi-hulls up the coast, and it was an guess what? It's an absolute name off 70 knots on the wind.
Yeah, 70 knots. Now, apparently, only 65 out of the 155 boats that entered actually finished the race that year. Everybody deciding to bail when they got to Cape Brett because things got nasty. What do you think the conditions are going to be like at Cape Brett this time round?
Complete opposite.
We're definitely looking at those northerlies, more nor'easters as well this year, but quite light.
Yeah.
Have you guys got a bit of a strategic plan for keeping this boat ahead of the rest of the fleet?
Well, I think it's a favourable forecast for us, because we've got the high flyers aren't going to be up planing and getting away from us. So, tight angles with the waterline length, I think Emotional's going to be going quite nicely. But we've got a couple of strategies. We'll see how we go. There's obviously staying in close or going out and trying to find the breeze. We'll see what happens, but we're looking forward to it. It's super exciting.
Now, you yourself are no stranger to competitive racing, Olympics, America's Cup, just whatever. But you've got a couple of other crew on board who might be able to help guide the way for this race.
Yeah, we've got Scotty Beavis. He's in the mix. He's I won't call him my bowman, but he's my bowman.
So, Beavis, you're now the bellman.
No, so he's been really instrumental in setting up the boat for racing because it's obviously had an extensive refit over the last 12 months, and just getting in the water was a milestone, let alone getting it ready to race. So Scotty's in there, and then we've got crew boss Jazz in the mix, and we've got a mix of crew. We've got obviously the professionals like Scotty and myself, but we've set this boat up so that it's functional for anyone of any level to learn, not just to learn to sail, but to sail the boat. So got rid of the running backstays and got gone to blade head sails and all that sort of stuff, asymmetric spin. So it's the same boat. It's got a few little modern twists that help us get up the coast, and hopefully we do Woody proud.
I'm sure you will. Now, speaking of that, the boat has had a few modifications since you bought it. Tell us a little bit about the sailing school that you guys have now set up.
Yeah, well, Mum, she's been 50 years running the Penny Whiting Sailing School, and sort of end of an era, and decided to continue the legacy. And she certainly didn't want us using her boat, so she said, go get your own one. So we found a pretty cool one to do it. And so, so as we come into the America's Cup and a lot of excitement around the sport of sailing and all that sort of stuff, we've just... we're really looking forward to getting people out, sort of inspiring the next generation of sailing.
So, obviously, if you are watching at home and you have been inspired by some of these stories that we've told this morning leading into the start of the 38th PIC Coastal Classic, contact these guys here and you could get a ride on this boat, not only to learn how to sail, but to also spectate for the America's Cup.
Yeah, that's right.
And considering the few little changes that we've heard in the news about course changes, being on board a boat is going to have to be the way to watch the America's Cup. More on that later. Gria Houston, who is Commodore of the Multi-Hull Yacht Club of New Zealand and also sailing on the trimaran Timberwolf. Gria, you must be pretty stoked to have 175 entries, considering all the drama that's happened around 2020.
Yeah, I think we are pretty stoked to have 175 boats. We were, I think a month ago, we were looking at 100. So 175, like, that's totally blowing my mind, and I think everybody, all those organisers. So I look forward to seeing people out there, and thanks for coming out. Obviously, everybody wants to go for a sail. So, yeah, it could be a long one, so they're going to enjoy their time on the water.
Have you seen a lot of boats come out of the woodwork and you haven't seen out racing for quite some time?
What's funny you say that, the boat I'm on, Timberwolf, that's been a process bringing that back to life. But actually, a conversation I had on the phone yesterday, I think her name was Helen, Zero Tolerance, which is a boat that was owned by Daggy, squatty member. That hasn't been on the water for a while, so they've got that going again. So that's a boat that's come back into the race. I look forward to seeing that.
And this is definitely a weekend warriors race as well. I mean, there's a lot of pro sailors in the lineup this year, but predominantly anybody who's got a boat that can get Cat 3 can get involved in the PIC Coastal Classic. Is that right?
That's correct. You get Cat 3, you can enter the race, head up the coast. Yeah. Stay safe is probably our biggest thing, but yeah, any boat can enter. Cat 3, get into it. Yeah.
Now, speaking of entering, you did say that you're on Timberwolf. You are in Division 7. You're a little bit untested. You're going to have for a few training runs, but how do you think you're going to go against the rest of the boats in your fleet?
Well, Division 7, it was, I think the Timberwolf was built for this division back in the day. I got my good friend Bob Fisher on with me. We've sailed since the Dirty Deeds days together, really, in the coastal. But I think just talking to another friend of mine, Chris Skinner, he's got me a bit G'd up, actually. He's talking about, you'll get around Cowell, just pop the basket screech and away you go. So I'm quietly feeling a bit confident.
Chris Skinner has a lot of great advice. We know that.
Yeah, he's also picked 6 kilos of chicken. But I'm looking forward to it now. I'm looking to power the boat up. Hopefully we'll have a good ride.
Do you have any pre-race premonitions?
I have some, but I've talked to you about that before we came on the camera, but I won't mention that. But always sailing into Russell, hull out, winning has always been a goal of mine. I've never won the overall race. I've won the division, but it'll be good to be the first boat in there. I might try and have that premonition tonight.
Do you think you could win it?
After talking to Skinner, I think anything could happen. But no, who knows? I don't actually know. Like you say, we're untested on the boat. Anything can happen. But we'll give it a good shot. Send it as hard as we can, basically.
And it all happens in Russell at the end of the race. So what do the sailors and supporters have to look forward to this year?
Well, look forward to when you get there in the dark, early morning. There's lights on the wharf. That's a new thing that's happened today. I was like, okay, that's cool. But Friday's the normal get on the booze thing, and then Saturday we've got 7 o'clock briefing, prize giving, and then we've got a band starting like 7:30. So I think everyone, as they're keen to sail, they're also keen to party. So it should be a good time up there.
You're keen to party, aren't you?
I'm always.
Okay, so before you start partying, there are a lot of people that actually go into making a race like this possible. The Great Race North, the PIC Coastal Classic. Is there anybody in particular who you'd like to thank?
Well, I think this is my opportunity to say a race like this wouldn't happen without the PIC insurance brokers. Massive support for the last five years. They're here now helping out with briefing and handing out all the packs. So we've got to thank them. We also thank all our sponsors, everyone to make this race happen, and all the competitors for entering and making this year a big one again. So that's awesome.
Fantastic. Gria Houston, Commodore of the club that runs the Great Race North, the PIC Coastal Classic. Best of luck. Hold on to it.
Yeah.
This is Bex Hornell, and you've probably heard her name before. Bex did the Sands Round North Island two-handed race earlier this year with your dad, Chris.
Yeah.
You were selected for the Royal Acarana Yacht Club Youth America's Cup team, and now you are on board NZ Ocean Racing, the Volvo 65 campaign run by Bianca Cook. Oh my gosh, what a year! Everyone else has had a sucky year. That sounds like a fantastic year.
It hasn't been bad.
So tell me, what sort of crew dynamic have you guys got on board, because everyone's still quite new to the boat itself. I mean, you do have a couple of quite big names on board, but how are you guys all coming together as a crew?
I think we're coming together really well. Everybody on the boat has a lot of experience, so it's all gelling nicely for now anyway.
And how excited is everybody to get on that start line? This is the very first race, the maiden race as NZ Ocean Racing.
Yeah, everyone's really excited. We have been pushing pretty hard to get the boat going, and it's going pretty well from what I see anyway.
So tell us, what's your position on board?
I'm mid-bow for this race.
So as mid-bow, for those that might not know, what does your job entail?
On this boat, I'm helping hook up the sails, a lot of grinding actually, mostly grinding. Yeah, all the day at the gym.
Fantastic. So what is the end goal for you guys in this race? I mean, is it to play conservative, or is it to really push the boat hard?
We're definitely going to be pushing as hard as we can to get to the bay first, obviously, and hopefully beat all the little multi-hulls as well.
So there are some quite fast multi-hulls in those multi-hull divisions, and there's also the 36-metre, 118-foot super yacht, Miss Silver, that's also racing. You're going to go against those guys?
Well, with the forecast, hopefully we'll be alright. It's looking light upwind, so hopefully we'll put those boats behind us quietly.
So the goal for NZ Ocean Racing in the 38th PIC Coastal Classic is to be the very first boat to cross the finish line in Russell.
Of course, yes.
Now that is also, you're sailing into your home waters, you are from the Bay of Islands. Does that sort of add an extra sort of special element to the race?
Yeah, I mean, this is a race that I've done a lot of times now, and it's always a race that I really enjoy, and of course I love sailing into the bay. It's my hometown, so yeah.
Fantastic. Well, best of luck to you and the entire team on NZ Ocean Racing. The world is watching you guys. You're the only boat that's really out there training hard.
Yeah.
Go New Zealand.
Perfect, thank you.